Welcome to the SA Update, your source for insightful conversations and timely topics designed to educate our clients and strengthen our communities. I'm your host, Mike Schuster. Today, our guest is Melissa DeLaet, the CEO and the Executive Director of the Greater Grand Island Community Foundation. Welcome to the podcast, Melissa.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mike.
Melissa, tell the viewers a little bit about yourself first.
Well, like Mike said, my name is Melissa DeLaet. I'm a CEO at Greater Grand Island Community Foundation. I've been with the foundation for about 8.5 years. Have a pretty solid 25 year history or experience in the nonprofit world and in sales and marketing, and love what we do at the foundation. It's a lot of fun. My husband and I are also small business owners here in Grand Island, and so we own the Mainstay Suites, which is an extended stay property here in the city of Grand Island. And then we've got 3 boys who keep us on our toes all the time and keep us busy. I grew up in Nebraska, just a few miles down the road in Minden, and I really enjoyed spending a lot of time in the different central Nebraska towns, and have been here in Grand Island for over 20 years and just love it here.
Yeah. Well, and I spent some time with you at the Community Foundation, so thank you for coming on the podcast today, because we really felt like it's important to talk about things that community foundations in general can do. So the first thing I really want to talk to you about today is donor advised funds. So tell our viewers a little bit about donor advised funds, and then talk about the impacts you've seen donor advised funds do back in our community.
Yeah, absolutely. So donor advised funds have really upticked in popularity. Honestly, especially since the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Acts, when a lot of the changes were put in place. And so a lot of individuals and families utilize them almost like a private foundation. It's an opportunity for them to be able to put their name on a fund and make a gift into it. And sometimes they can get a tax deduction for that gift, and then they're able to make an impact at another time with the fund. Really, a donor advised fund it's a community savings account, and that's what's really exciting about it. And so you think about checking accounts and that type of things, but community foundations in general are a community savings account, but a donor advised fund is just a great example of that. And so a lot of donors will take advantage of tax bundling, and they'll pump 3 years worth of donations into this donor advised fund, and then they'll take the tax credit for it, and then they'll give out, over those 3 years. And it really is an opportunity for, the donor to be able to utilize that tool in their toolbox as they think about their financial situation, but also as they think about the legacy that they're living on a community.
Absolutely. And that's something that a lot of our clients use that for too, or whether it's a big gift that they're saving up for over the long run. But talk about a little bit about community foundations are obviously built on legacies. Talk about how you guys impact the legacy of some of your donors. And in particular, I know we've sent a couple clients over that have sent up some really unique legacy gifts. For example, the pet gift that recently was done. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, the beauty of a community foundation is that the community foundation's job is the community. And so, where you look at a lot of other nonprofit organizations, they have a singular mission. And so that could be, homeless people or animals or community betterment, and that type of thing. But the community foundation does all of those things and more. And so that's what's really the beauty. And so when somebody comes into our office and they say, we want to we want to figure out what our legacy is, and we want to leave a legacy on this community, we have a really unique opportunity to sit down with them and help them to map that out. And so when you think about kind of end of life planning and legacy planning, there's usually, you're working with a financial advisor like yourself, or a professional advisor, you're working with a CPA, you're working with an estate planning attorney, but really you should be working with a community foundation as well, because we're coming in alongside you as a philanthropic advisor, and we're just in a different role. And so our job is to help you, put together what that legacy plan might look like. And so, Mike, you mentioned, some specific examples, and we've got some really great funds. We have about 240 funds at our community foundation, and each fund functions almost like its own little nonprofit, which is really cool. But we worked with the donor in conjunction with Schuster Anderson, who set up a fund because they really, really love animals, specifically cats. But this donor really, really loves animals. And we were working with a local animal shelter, Voices for Companion Animals, who identified a need to be able to provide medical services to pets of people who didn't have the resources to be able to do so. And so they were constantly getting phone calls from people who would say, my pet needs this, and I don't have the financial resources to do so. Or they were getting given pets who their owners, for whatever reason, could no longer take care of them, and needed to be able to. So the Voices for Companion Animals would take on the ownership of that pet, and then it would have medical needs that they couldn't meet. And so a fund was established, and it's called the Happy Tails Fund, which is a cute play on the animals and the happiness that they then are able to feel, because the donor then puts dollars into there, and that organization can request those to provide those medical services. And they've developed an entire program around it, which is really cool. It's opened up an opportunity for that organization to be able to connect, their clients with this donor in a way that would have never been there before.
And that's a great example on a smaller scale, but on a bigger scale. I know you had a big impact here in Grand Island on the Children's Museum. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit. That's been a huge success here in our community.
Yeah, the Children's Museum. Honestly, the Children's Museum effort started in an elevator in downtown Grand Island. I was in an elevator with a community member who said, "Hey, we need a children's museum, and will you help us work with that?" And we said, "Yeah, we will." And so we were able to convene a group of community-minded individuals who have been working on that project since really 2019 now, and developing that project. But it came from a strategic plan initiative, Mike, if you remember, at the foundation. The foundation had said, through our strategic plan, we want to find a community project and we want to uplift it and see it through to the end. And so we've been able to do that. And we've watched this organization grow from, a kitchen table, essentially, of donors and philanthropists sitting around and planning for something that they wanted to see come into the community, into a 501c3 organization that's functioning on its own, that's hired 2 staff now, that's in the middle of developing something that Central Nebraska is going to be really, really proud of.
Absolutely. It's a unique and a great addition to our community.
Yeah.
The last question I wanted to give you today was a big picture question. I mean, like you said earlier, you've been around for a long time. I actually served with you even on the Hope Harbor board, or I was on the board there with you when you came on board. But talk about your biggest impact that you felt like you made, because a lot of people, they see things happen in the community, but they don't realize the impact that some community foundations do across our state. So talk about the biggest impact that you've seen since you've been at Greater Grand Island.
Oh gosh, Mike, that's a tough question. And I would hate to bring it down to one singular impact, because the community foundation does so much. And I think that. I mean, Mike was one of our long-term board members. I think you spent 9 years with us on the board, providing guidance and learning about the inner workings of what's really a very complicated and dynamic vehicle for the community. But there's just so many things that we're able to help with. And a donor can come in and sit down and say, "I have this crazy idea." And we can say, "Well, you know what? We think we can help you make that happen." And that's kind of what I love the most about my job, is we get to have our fingers in a little bit of everything. And so when you look out across the landscape of the Greater Grand Island area, you see us on on College Park's donor board. We gave a huge grant at the time in the early 90s or late 80s. What was a huge grant for us to go into College Park. And you see us in the ball fields out in Caro, and you see us at Stick Creek Kids in Wood River, and you see us at the Children's Museum here in Grand Island, or Epic Discovery Center. I'm not supposed to call them a Children's Museum because they're for everybody. But you see us everywhere, and you see us at Hastings College, my alma mater. Some of our biggest grants of the year are through a donor advised fund at the foundation that impacts Hastings College and makes a significant impact on especially the art programs down there, but also a lot of other programs at Hastings College. And so, the possibilities are endless and the impact is endless. And that's what's beautiful about a community foundation.
Yeah. So I really appreciate you coming in today, because a lot of our viewers will be not only Grand Island area, but it will be all across Nebraska and other states too. So I really encourage any of you to follow up with your local community foundations. There's so many good things that can happen. Melissa, thank you for being our guest today on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. Thanks for having me.